Democrats screamed over each other in a chaotic debate as President Trump tightens his authoritarian grip on power. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. The 2020 election will be a referendum on whether we want to preserve whatever is left of our democratic institutions or whether we want to complete the slide into authoritarianism we've seen under Donald Trump. And that slide is not only real, after Trump's impeachment acquittal, it's accelerating. You can tell both from Trump's increased lawlessness and from the way he stands. I mean, look at him. He leans like he's accelerating. He literally looks like he's sliding downhill on skis. If you gave him a tiny push, he'd fall over like a Jenga tower. The Trump White House has literally been making lists of supposedly disloyal government officials, purging them from the administration, installing unqualified cronies in high-profile positions, insisting he has the right to interfere in criminal cases to protect his allies, and claiming that not only is he above the law, but that he himself is the law.
I'm allowed to be totally involved. I'm actually, I guess, the chief law enforcement officer of the country.
No, you're not a law enforcement officer. First of all, you'd never pass the background check or the physical. You don't even know. You don't even know the sound a gun makes.
Bink.
Is that a gun or a duck's mouth? Beak. Also, Trump declaring himself the country's chief law enforcement officer makes clear that he desperately wishes he was a cop, when at best he's more like that weird crossing guard who no one actually knows and who doesn't seem to be paying attention to traffic. All right, kids, let's go. Just make sure, dodge the cars. And by the way, while he's tightening his own authoritarian grip on power, Trump is fresh off a trip to India where he cozied up to another authoritarian nationalist, Narendra Modi, who's rounded up thousands of Muslims and passed a citizenship law that discriminates against Islam. And rather than comment on any of that, Trump said in a press conference before he left India that he wanted to avoid being controversial so as not to ruin his trip.
I thought it was a great 2 days. It was a fantastic 2 days. I'm going to be not at all controversial because I don't want to blow the 2 days plus 2 days of travel on one answer, one little answer. So I'll be very, very conservative in my answers, if you don't mind.
It's so weird when Trump just openly says what he's doing. He's like a guy on a date saying, normally I'd be cheap, but tonight I'm going to pick up the tab so you'll have sex with me. But tomorrow, breakfast is on you. Trump, of course, has a deep affinity for fellow authoritarians. He's always trying to mimic them or impress them, whether it's Modi or Putin or the time he sat in the Oval Office with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia and literally showed off a giant poster of all the weapons he'd sold to them, like a sixth grader presenting a class project on the military. Did you know the Army has planes and tanks and boats? And Democrats are trying to sort out who has the best chance of defeating Trump, and thankfully, we got answers to that important question last night in a calm, well-organized debate on CBS with clear questions in which everyone took turns speaking, and we all got to hear their answers.
First of all,
Bernie, let me go. Let me go.
Tom, I think she was talking about my plan, not yours.
Here's one thing.
The opposition to the filibuster is not a discretion from a long time ago.
I think she recognized me.
Mayor Bloomberg
Never said that.
have said to one of his...
Oh, come on. I
That
wrote
bill,
that law.
along with... You didn't write that bill. I wrote that bill.
I wrote the bill.
Let's
talk about what it adds up to.
Well, math.
Let's talk about math indeed. Okay,
If
so
we
here's
do
the math.
nothing,
Things
the truth
that you
is,
just named are the
Pete,
things we
that the
favor.
Americans...
Right,
Donald
pointed to
Trump's
that.
Bernie.
Bernie,
Donald Trump.
Let me
That's
ask
where
you,
your
wait,
reparations are the
and
only
I
thing.
challenge everyone...
Senator Klobuchar,
Come out.
next
Let me ask
question.
you.
New topic,
for
new
this whole
topic,
campaign.
Senator.
Jesus! Does the C in CBS stand for cluster? That was like watching a family dinner if the special ingredient in the mashed potatoes was cocaine. I've seen more polite conversations between New Yorkers fighting over a cab. Hey, I was here first. Oh, yeah, then why was my hand up? Now, with the stakes for the 2020 election so high, the Democratic candidates spent some time, in particular, fighting over their own positions on foreign policy. Now, let's be clear, there's no comparison to Trump on this topic, and any false equivalence between Trump and any Democrat is absurd. I mean, Trump has taken his praise for dictators to gross new levels, emulating them and even bragging that he and Kim Jong-un, quote, fell in love over Kim's beautiful letters, which he has bragged about or shown off to reporters multiple times. Trump loves holding up pieces of paper. He's like a high school senior running into the house with his college acceptance letter. Mom, look, I got into Pyongyang University. At least I think that's what it's. I can't read. And yet, even as Trump has lavished praise on one authoritarian nationalist after another, Republicans and Democrats were attacking Bernie Sanders for comments in which he praised not Cuba, but Cuba's literacy program. Now, as fact checkers have noted, Sanders' comments about Cuba mirror those of President Barack Obama in 2016, soon after he had moved to open diplomatic relations with Cuba. And yet, when Bernie tried to point that out last night's Democratic debate, a few people in the crowd tried to boo him, to Bernie's surprise.
What I said is what Barack Obama said in terms of Cuba, that Cuba made progress on education. Yes, I think, really? Really?
Bernie sounds like he just got cut in line at the deli. Really? You're gonna walk up? Let me see your ticket. That's handwritten. That's handwritten. That's not from this store. Meanwhile, billionaire former Republican Michael Bloomberg has actually praised authoritarian leaders like China's Xi Jinping, who he has said is not a dictator. And last night, Bloomberg again refused to call Xi a dictator, but somehow even worse than his comments on oppressive dictator was his bungling of multiple lame pre-written jokes that he tried to shoehorn into his answers.
Mayor Bloomberg, as mayor of New York, you declared war on obesity. You banned trans fats from restaurants, and you tried to do the same with large sugary drinks. So if you become president, will you push those policies on the national level as well?
Well, I think what's right for New York City isn't necessarily right for all the other cities. Otherwise, you'd have a naked cowboy in every city. So let's get serious here. Redlining is not the problem with the mortgage market, but it was a problem for the communities where it was done, and we stopped that. Let me also say, because since I have the floor for a second, that I really am surprised that all of these, my fellow contestants up here, I guess would be the right word for it, given nobody pays attention to the clock. I'm surprised they show up, because I would have thought after I did such a good job in beating them last week that they'd be a little bit afraid to do that.
Yeah. Let me put this in terms a New Yorker would understand. Mike Bloomberg went so far out of his way to make that joke, he had to take the FDR to the BQE, accidentally ended up on the LIE, and now his competitors are all on the FU. Now, Mike Bloomberg could just have easily stayed out of the race and spent his money to help whichever Democrat got the nomination, or he could have just offered Trump himself the money to resign. You know Trump would take it. Trump has never in his life passed up an opportunity to make money. If you asked him to sell the presidency for $1 billion, he'd say yes, and then quietly peel the sticker off his desk that says, for sale, $10. And yet Bloomberg decided instead to get into the race himself because he cares more about stopping progressives like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. In fact, he basically admitted as much himself in leaked audio from 2016 in which CNN reported that he called Warren scary. And honestly, the way Warren has destroyed him in these debates, he should be scared. Last night, for example, she highlighted allegations that Bloomberg harassed and discriminated against pregnant women in his company, including one incident in which he allegedly told a pregnant employee, "Kill it." Now, Bloomberg denied making the remark, even though the Washington Post reported that a former Bloomberg employee said he witnessed the conversation. And then after the debate, MSNBC anchor Chris Matthews asked Warren if she thought Bloomberg was lying, and her straightforward answers seemed to confuse Matthews.
Do you believe that the former mayor of New York said that to a pregnant employee?
Well, a pregnant employee sure said that he did. Why shouldn't I believe her?
You believe he's lying.
I believe the woman.
You believe he's
Which
lying?
means he's not telling the truth.
And why would he lie? Because just to protect himself.
Yeah? And why would she lie? I mean, that's the question, Chris.
Damn, look at his face. He genuinely can't understand. Why would he lie? Just to protect himself? Doesn't make any sense. Powerful men never do that. Warren flipped the question on him perfectly. As soon as she turned it around on him, Matthews malfunctioned like a robot who'd been asked an unsolvable riddle. Could God make a rock so big he could not lift it? We're watching as our current president tightens his grip on power and cozies up to authoritarians around the world. Meanwhile, an ex-Republican billionaire is trying to buy his way into the Democratic primary purely because he's scared of progressives like Warren and Bernie. And when Bloomberg insists he's the only one who can beat Trump, the rest of the field looks at him and says,
Really? Really?
this has been a closer look.